Welcome back to Hardball. The investigation in Trenton into Governor Christie's office continues to gather momentum. Last month, we heard testimony from one of Christie's campaign staffers laying out a compelling sequence of events. According to that testimony, on the night of August 12th, Christie's deputy chief of staff, Bridget Kelly, calls the campaign and learns that Fort Lee Mayor Mark Sokolich is not endorsing Christie's reelection bid. The next morning, she gives what looks like clear orders for political payback when she tells David Wildstein at the Port Authority, quote, time for some traffic problems in Fort Lee. We've also heard testimony from a top staffer in Christie's office that Bridget Kelly instructed her colleague to destroy a potentially incriminating email linking her to the lane closure. And today we heard testimony from a heavyweight inside Christie's office, his chief of staff, Kevin O'Dowd. Christie has repeatedly said that he only had 2 direct reports to him, and O'Dowd was one of them. O'Dowd testified today that Governor Christie asked him to personally question Bridget Kelly last December, and by all appearances, she said she had nothing to do with the lane closures. Here's O'Dowd.
I said, Bridget, I need to ask you about the lane closures. I think she said something like, sure, what about? I said, did you have anything to do with closing the lanes at the George Washington Bridge? She responded with, absolutely not.
Did you find her denial credible?
I did.
Why?
Bridget Kelly is someone that I had worked with and known for 4 years, someone who I thought very highly of, hardworking, energetic, loyal, someone who I believed and trusted.
And it's not just Bridget Kelly in the spotlight either. Today, we also learned an interesting series of events that preceded Christie's denials in December of any knowledge of the bridge closures. We'll get to that in a minute. Brian Murphy's an MSNBC contributor and was the managing editor of PoliticsNJ.com. And Angela Delasanti is a New Jersey State House reporter with the Associated Press. Thank you both for joining us. I see you're sitting outside the State Assembly there. What do you, Brian, you start. You've been on the show before. You know what I want. I wanted the crux of what happened today. I'm watching the whole thing, and I'm saying what's interesting is what nobody seems to say. Why did Christie, the governor, go through this sort of, well, very formalized way of asking what happened, sending the one guy he talks to, why didn't go in and ask Bridget Kelly himself? And then he gets this answer back. And if the answer tells him, hey, there was a complaint by the mayor of Fort Lee that maybe he was getting screwed by the governor's office, that never gets into the press conference the next day. The governor's asked about it. He acts like he didn't know anything about any politics here, when in fact he'd been told by O'Dowd, the guy who testified today, he knew exactly what was going on. There was an accusation of political payback by the mayor already at work in his office. He knew about it, got it from his chief of staff, wouldn't tell the press. Why was he hiding all this information if he was supposedly coming clean?
Chris, I think there's something, it's important to remember the timeline here, that when these investigations are going on, they know that there's a clock that's going to run out in early 2014. The committee that's investigating this had subpoena power, but that subpoena power was due to expire. And I think if they thought they could just run out the clock, make it seem like nothing was going on, and you see what's happening there on the 12th of December, and that morning Kevin O'Dowd finds out, walks in on this meeting at the governor's mansion with Bill Stepien, asks Bridget Kelly, gets the denial from Kelly, has a meeting later that day with Bill Baroni, their man at the Port Authority, tells him that he's toast, but tells him also that he's going to get set up with a new job with another Republican political consultant. I think Christie's tying up a bunch of loose ends and preparing to wait out the clock for only a few more weeks until that subpoena power expires. Then they think they're going to be scot-free.
Angela, tell me about the AP reporting. I mean, the standard report. What is the news value of today's testimony from the AP's point of view, your point of view as a reporter?
Well, I think that first of all, this is the highest ranking Christie official to testify. And so this is someone that we hadn't heard from before. We had seen some of his interview notes in the Mastro report, but this was a chance to hear him up front, to get him to answer questions firsthand. And I think that was new. I think we learned also that he said, like the others, he has no direct involvement in the lane closings or any foreknowledge of it. And he also answered another key question, or didn't answer another key question. He said he is not aware of anyone who may have had that knowledge, and he certainly doesn't know why it occurred. So, his testimony today advanced the ball forward a little bit, but we still are left wondering what the key answers are here.
Brian, what doesn't make sense to me is 4 months into a controversy, the governor of New Jersey finally asked his chief of staff to very carefully, almost hermetically sealed, go talk to another staffer where he's not in the room so he doesn't get infected by information. It's so Nixonian. It's so the way Nixon dealt with Dean. The whole thing about, you know, just trying to avoid, to make it look like you're investigating when you're not. Anyway, Christie's chief of staff testified today that he didn't want to know why Christie wanted him to talk to Bridget Kelly. He never even asked why the governor asked him to talk to Kelly. Here he is.
He said, ask her whether she had anything to do with closing the lanes at the bridge.
Did you ask him why?
I did not.
Did you ask the governor if you should ask questions of anyone else?
I did not.
Did you raise to the governor any question about whether there were other people that you should make inquiries of?
I did not.
It's so Nixonian, Brian. I mean, here you go. The governor targets one staffer, and he has his top person go to that person, again, hermetically sealed, so he's not listening to it. And they can always deny everything except what O'Dowd tells him. O'Dowd must know what he's supposed to tell the governor. He only tells him what he wants to tell him, perhaps. We don't know what he tells him because that's between the two of them under oath. The whole thing is so carefully run by someone who doesn't want to get blamed, clearly.
That's right. Yeah. Someone asked a question today pointing out that there are 31 years of prosecutorial experience combined when you look at the staffers in the governor's office, and yet nobody had any curiosity, right? The line they keep saying in this building back here is that there's a curious lack of curiosity when it comes to looking at what's going on here. And I think we're seeing that play out, that, you know, and it's baffling, right? That you find out about this email, you never check with the person who received it, you never check with the person who sent it. People are referencing emails, there are long phone calls that happen, no one ever does any follow-ups, no one checks back on anything. I think you're seeing, to some extent, you're seeing their defense has been, this is an administration full of prosecutors, we would never do anything illegal. The flip side of that is that it's full of prosecutors who studied corruption cases up close and know what can get you tripped up and know what can get you in trouble. And they've determined that they're not going to do any of those things. Even if they're not directly involved in ordering this, they're not going to do anything that's going to implicate them or give them any kind of additional legal exposure beyond what they already have to take by having the jobs that they have.
Angela, it seems like the story today is that puts more and more heat on Bridget Kelly. That the focus of the discussion, if you take out the politics and maybe some common sense, you're left with the fact that they're all pointing to Bridget Kelly. They're saying she did this on her own as if she's out robbing gas stations. The question I keep asking is, who do you think she was doing this for? She was doing it for the governor's reelection. She's hand in glove with the campaign on this. She's getting information from the people in the campaign. A few hours later, she takes the steps to close the bridges in some kind of retaliation. And they're all acting like somehow she's the bad guy when in fact she's hand in glove with the campaign. But legally, I'm not sure what that all means. If she's just been dog trained to do what she does, and she does it on sort of instinct because she's told your job is to screw any enemies of the governor, and then she gets caught screwing an enemy of the governor's, but he says, I didn't tell you to screw that one guy, then she's standing there holding the bag. Your thoughts about how it's coming out in the press and will come out?
It's very interesting, the conflicting portraits of Bridget Kelly that have emerged. When Christina Renna testified earlier before the committee, she talked about how Bridget Kelly was someone who couldn't make a decision on her own, that she couldn't have possibly acted alone. Today you heard something entirely different. Kevin O'Dowd said, he asked Bridget Kelly, did she have anything to do with the lane closings? She said no. He believed her. Why did he believe her? Because she was a hard worker. He trusted her. She had never lied to him. So you heard something very different today than you heard a few weeks ago.
And just imagine this. The entire George Washington Bridge apparatus obeyed Bridget Kelly when she said, shut down the lanes. What's the context to that? As you just said, I think, Angela, very well. Who gave her all this authority, all this political license to do something like this? Where'd all that, this assumption that she can call the shots all by herself? At the same time, they try to say she has no power. Well, she shut down the bridge. Somebody gave her that power. Thank you, Brian Murphy. Thank you, Angela Delicenti from the Associated Press. Up next, HBO's John Oliver has got something on me. He's caught me being a loyalist. And this is Hardball, the place for politics.